Welcome to week 2 of the Freedom Ticket. Glad you're still with us. Hang in there. It's going to keep getting better and better, and we're going to get into some really cool stuff here shortly. But first, we got to talk about a few more basic things just to lay the foundation and get you set on your way. In this module, we're going to talk about some basics of business. There's really 4 basics that you got to pay attention to. In this one, we're going to talk about your names for your business and your brands, as well as your intellectual property. And then the next module, we're going to talk about insurance and administrative and accounting type of stuff. Not so exciting stuff, but it's important stuff that you actually need to know and be aware of as you're getting your business going. So let's start with naming. There's basically 3 types of names that you're going to have related to selling on Amazon. One is your company name. This is the name that Amazon's going to pay you at. You know, when they send you money, when they transfer your money to your bank, this is the name that they're going to pay to. So you need what a lot of people call it a corporate name or a main name. This is something that you want to set up and decide what that name is going to be. Some people make it very simple. Other people come up with something really creative. It's totally up to you. Now this name will be visible on Amazon. So whatever this name is, Amazon's actually going to show this name. So keep that in mind when you're actually determining the name, because on Amazon, everything is public now. You can actually see where the sellers, when you click into their storefront, you can see their actual name and you can see their address. So if you're doing this business from your home and you don't want to reveal your home address, you're going to have to get a different address to actually enter when you register your business. What a lot of people in the US do is they use like a mailbox store, like a UPS store, for example, as their actual address. There's lots of companies that will do virtual addresses for you. You can do a Google search for virtual US addresses. If you live outside the US, I'm not sure in other countries if there's virtual addresses or not. But if you want to use a US-based address for your US-based business, and you live outside the US, that's not a problem. You can get a virtual address as well. There's a lot of them all over the US. They actually, what these places do is they receive mail for you, they forward it to you, they scan it and send it in and send it to you. So keep that in mind. Whatever address you're choosing as your business when you register is going to be public. You can change it later, but it's going to be public to the public. The next one that you're going to need is your Amazon storefront name. And your storefront name is separate from your actual company name. It can be the same thing if you want, but most people make it separate. So for example, if my company name is, my initials are KK, if it's KK Inc., it could be my company name, for example, my storefront name might be Kevin's Cool Pet Treats or something like that. And that would be my storefront name. Just so it's not so boring and it actually sounds interesting, and people maybe will click that and actually then want to see what other things I'm selling. And so that's my storefront name. It's what's going to show when it says sold by on Amazon. So your actual company name is not going to actually show up until they click through all the way to get to your storefront name and see your address. But the sold by is going to show up as your storefront name. So you want to pick a good, cool name that represents whatever it is that you're selling. The next name is, in some cases, you may want to have brand names. Not everybody takes it to this level with this 3rd level of naming, but in my case, a lot of times I actually give my products a brand name too. For example, I had a company that I was doing for a long time on Amazon, and let's just say the company was Kevin's, let's just say it's KK Inc. That was the main company name. And then I had a storefront name, and the storefront name was Kevin's Sports Goods. And then the brand name that I have was called UActive Sports. And then I actually took it to a 4th level, and the actual products would have their own name, like the Adwell Core Shredder or something like that. That would be 4 different levels. You don't have to go to that extreme if you don't want to. Most people don't actually give their individual products a brand name. They just stop at 3. But those are 3 that you need to consider. Now, when you're choosing these names, you want to choose something that's easy to spell, if at all possible. You'll see some crazy names on Amazon for brand names, and a lot of these are sellers based in China that are just picking random digits out of the alphabet. Most of them don't speak very good English, and they don't want to go through the trouble trying to think of something creative, so they call their brand NK32677 or something crazy like that. And they know that there's not going to be a conflict in the trademark database for some made-up thing like that. But I recommend you don't do it that way. I recommend you pick something cool and unique that's easy to spell and easy to remember. And now there's websites that will help you in picking these names. There's like NameStation, there's Busted Name, there's several others. If you look down in the resources here, that'll be linked in the PDF for the notes for this chapter, where you can actually go and they help you generate names and they help you come up with ideas. You can enter different phrases, different subject matters, and they'll spit out a bunch of different ideas. And what's cool about them is that at the same time they'll check to see if the website, the domain is available, if the Facebook and Instagram and other social media platforms, if they're available. They're really cool tools. Most of them are free, and so you can actually get some ideas and do some brainstorming with those tools. You do want to make sure that at least for one of your names, ideally your company name and your top level brand name, you actually get the domain for that. It's very important that you actually be able to get the .com ideally, not the .net. I mean, if you have to get the .net, that's okay, or one of the other dots. But if you can get the .com, that's always the best. That way, when there's a lot of people that will go onto Amazon, and when they see your product, if they've never heard for you, they might just go and Google it, see what shows up to make sure you're a legit company. Amazon also uses that sometimes for verification. When you're with brand registry, they don't want a Gmail address. They want a Kevin at kevinssportsgoods.com type of address. So make sure, ideally, you set it up that way. So that's the important thing you need to know about the names. Names can be critical to your brand success, especially as you grow. A cool name can actually give people confidence and give them, encourage them to actually buy and want to follow you and have an affinity towards your brand versus something that's just totally random or totally doesn't make sense. Now, if you don't know what you're going to sell yet and you're signing up for an Amazon account, you could pick something a little bit more generic, and then you can always change it later if you need to, but I would try to narrow it down and get something that's locked in as soon as you can. Now, once you've come up with something that's actually good, you're going to want to trademark the name, and that falls under IP, which is the other thing we're going to talk about here. But before we do that, once you've determined your company name, you're going to need to form a company. If you're outside the U.S., I can't give you any advice there. Every country is a little bit different, but if you're forming a U.S. company, if you're based in the U.S., ideally you want to form that company in the state that you live in. Because if you form it in the state that you don't live in, you may open yourself up to double taxation. For example, California will tax you twice. If you're Canadian, there's some special, depending on how you set up the company and you set up a U.S. company, you could get double taxation. I'm not a legal advisor or accountant, so make sure you check with your accountant or legal advisor for the specifics of your area. But you want to be careful there on some of the tax things of how and where you set it up. So if you're in the U.S., like I live in Texas, I have a Texas company. If you're outside the U.S., there's some options there's some good states to set up for. And you can do this also if you're in the U.S., depending on the tax ramifications of it. But Delaware and Nevada are both popular states because they have some very business-friendly regulations. You can check into those, see if one of those might be good for you. Another one that a lot of people use, especially foreigners, is Wyoming. Wyoming, you can go to wyomingagents.com, and for like less than $100 or so, I think it is, you can actually set up a Wyoming company, and then it's about $100 to $150 a year renewal fee. It's really simple, really basic reporting. There's a lot of protection of ownership and stuff. Wyoming's very business friendly. So a lot of foreign-based sellers actually set up in Wyoming. So that's if they want a U.S.-based company. Now, you don't have to have a U.S.-based company to sell on Amazon in the U.S., but it does help down the road if you decide to sell the company. Because in the U.S., especially if it's a company that's buying you, it needs to get what's called an SBA loan or Small Business Administration loan. They can only buy U.S.-based companies. Some of the aggregators that are buying, some of them don't care where you're based. Some of them actually want to buy only U.S.-based as well. So it just depends. Most of the aggregators, though, they as long as it's sold in the U.S., they don't care where you're based. But there's a few that actually want you to be based in the U.S. So you'll have to take those things into consideration as you're opening your business. When you open the business, you can choose. There's several different types under U.S. law. There's what's called a C corp, which is that's what all the big companies are. The Apples, the Nikes, the Adidases, all those. Most of those are all C corps. They can have unlimited shareholders. They can sell stock. They can do a lot of things. There's what's called sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is just you basically operating as your own. A lot of hairdressers and people like that, barbers and hairdressers and stuff, are sole proprietorships. So all the taxes, they don't have a separate company. All the taxes go through themselves. I don't recommend you do that for Amazon. There's also what's called an S Corp, which is kind of like a smaller version of a C Corp. It's limited to 25 shareholders, but it has some tax advantages depending on your situation. Again, you need to talk to your tax advisor for the specifics for your situation, but you can have some pass-through and you can have some, there's some advantages to having an S Corp. But the one that I recommend most for Amazon sellers is what's called an LLC, or limited liability company. And an LLC, a lot of times, even if you're a single operator, you can have a partnership. So if you and your buddy are starting this business, you could start an LLC, and it's basically like a partnership with you and your buddy. Well, it's better than just a partnership agreement because it's a corporation. So it gives you some extra, as long as you do things right, some extra layers of protection in case of legal issues. But if you're just by yourself, you can do what's called a single member LLC. And a single member LLC, it gets reported right on your normal tax return in the U.S. So you're just going to show that as an additional business, and it just goes right onto your normal U.S. 1040 tax return. And so that can simplify things a little bit for you. And again, like I said, you want to try to form one of these type of entities in the state where you live, if you live in the U.S. And if you live outside the U.S., you could use your foreign company to register in the U.S., or you could set one of these up like through Wyoming agents or something like that. Once you've got the company set up and you get your store name and hopefully your brand name, then you want to do, before you've actually gone through the process of actually filing all the documents and setting up your bank account and all that stuff, you're going to want to do intellectual property search. You want to do at least a trademark search. So there's three types of intellectual property, and we have Rich Goldstein is going to be talking about in the bonus section a little bit later, going into more depth on intellectual property and some of the things that you need to know about that. But intellectual property is comprised of three things: of trademarks, and trademarks, copyrights, and patents. And sometimes people get these mixed up. They interchange them or they get them confused. So let's talk about what each one is. A trademark is either a word mark, which means like the word Nike, for example. Just the word Nike is a word mark. Another type of trademark is an actual mark, and the mark is like the swoosh, the logo, the swoosh logo. When you're registering on Amazon, you want to get at least the word mark is ideal. It costs a little bit extra to get both of them when you file for your trademark, but make sure you always get at least the word mark. That's going to help you for brand registry and some of the things that you need on Amazon. And if you have a cool logo or a cool design, you could trademark that as well. So that trademarks protect brand names, basically names. You could do this for your brand name. You could do it for your store name if you want to. You do it for your company name. Just depends on what level of protection that you would like to do. You need to file this, if you're selling in the U.S., you need to file in the United States for a trademark. It takes about 8 to 10 months to actually get the final document back. It's like a document with a gold seal. And in that meantime, you don't have a lot of protection. But it's something you need to do. So even once you decide what your names are, I would go ahead and do the trademarks right away. While you're still getting everything else set up, get that process going, because you're going to need that if you need to defend yourself or need to protect your intellectual property, and you're going to need it for Amazon. Now, you can also get a trademark outside of the United States if you want to, and there's a company called Seller Trademarks that Helium 10 partners with that can help you get a trademark in many different countries, including the U.S. if you want to go through a lawyer. You can do it yourself through sites like Legal Sherpa or Trademarkia, which is, I think, a Google site. You can do it yourself cheaper, but I think it's always best to have a lawyer do your trademark for you, because they can search some additional databases to make sure there's not a conflict. But if you want to just do a cursory check, you can go to Google Trademarks or Trademarkia or even Legal Sherpa, type in the name you're thinking about, and it'll come back and it'll tell you whether it's taken or not, or whether you need to change it. But sometimes names that are really close to each other can cause conflict, and lawyers are better at determining that, where there's potential conflict, than you trying to do it on your own. But Seller Trademarks is a great place that you can use. They can do it in other countries as well. And once you have a trademark in one of the authorized countries that Amazon authorized trademarks in, there's a list at Seller Central where you can actually see, but it's most of the European countries, the US, Canada, Australia, Mexico, pretty much basically wherever Amazon sells or has a storefront. You can actually use those trademarks to get brand registry in other countries. So like for example, on Amazon, if you don't want to wait the 8 to 10 months, you could actually go to someone like Seller Trademarks and get a trademark in Germany, for example. And the German trademarks can take about 2 to 3 weeks to get. You can rush it if you need to for an extra fee. But they're much faster than US trademarks because they have a different process there. But once you get the German trademark, you can use that to get brand registry on Amazon. So at brandregistry.amazon.com is where you go once you have a trademark and you tell Amazon, hey, this is my name, this is my trademark. They'll verify some information with the public databases and ask you for a little bit of information. And once you have that, Amazon will turn on some additional features on your Amazon seller account that are very, very important. One of them is brand registry. So Amazon will actually give you some really cool data about what people are searching for and which ones they're clicking on and what they're buying. You'll be able to actually run videos and video ads. You'll get to do what's called A+ or EBC content that goes down at the bottom of the page. So you'll have some additional sales material down at the bottom of each of your listings. You'll have a number of other protection mechanisms. You'll be able to run Amazon Post. You'll be able to do what's called attribution, where you can run outside traffic to Amazon and track it. There's just a whole host of things that Amazon gives you extra benefits if you're brand registered, because Amazon wants brands on the platform. So if you want to accelerate that process, you could use Seller rather than waiting the 8 to 10 months, still file in the US, but then go and file in like Germany and use that to get the extra benefits on Amazon while you're waiting for the US one to come through. Now the difference is if you go and apply for one, say in Germany, that's going to open up the door for you on Amazon to get all the additional features that Amazon offers, but it's not going to give you legal protection in the US. So if someone violates your mark in the US and copies you, until that US one goes through, you're going to have limited legal protection. And a lot of times you'll see when people have trademarks, they'll put the TM. That means it's going through the process of getting registered. It's only once it's registered, you'll see the R with the circle around it. That actually means it's fully registered. So that's something else to keep in mind, or if you're marketing your stuff, that's how you would have to mark it. The other thing on IP are patents. And patents are to protect something that you've invented. They don't have anything to do with your logo, with your name. They're all about invention. So if later on in one of the modules, I'm going to actually show you one of my products is a dog bowl. And this dog bowl, when I created it, I had an idea for this design. And the first thing I did before I actually really started sourcing the product is I went to Google Patents and I actually did a search. And lo and behold, up came a patent for a slow feed dog bowl. And this was being sold on Amazon. It was like a green one with a bunch of little spikes and stuff in it, and it was doing really, really well. And they had a patent on it. So I had to read their patent, consult with a lawyer, and I had to change my product enough to different shape, different design, to actually make it not in the same function as theirs, because they had what's called a design patent. So there's two types of patents. There's what's called a utility patent and what's called a design patent. And so a design patent is basically what the product looks like. Its shape, it's how it looks. A utility patent is how it functions and what it does. And so I was able to do my dog bowl because I was able to, they had a design patent, and I was able to change it just enough to actually make it a different product. So those are the two types of patents. You can file these on your products if you want. It's not always necessary. But if you really have something you think is going to be a home run, you can consider filing a patent on it. Design patents are much cheaper than utility patents. And I would engage the services of a lawyer. If you could write these yourself and file them, but you really need to have a lawyer help you out with these if you decide to go that route. But I would only do this if you're creating something from scratch. It's a brand new concept that nobody's ever done. If you're taking something that you found at a manufacturer and modifying it, I probably would not actually do a patent on something like that. One thing is in China, you can also file patents in China. And sometimes, when you're talking to the factories, they can say, hey, this is a patent, this product has a patent on it. Or you'll see someone on an Amazon listing say, this product has a patent. Sometimes that's BS. They're just saying that to scare people off. Sometimes it's actually true, but the patent in China doesn't apply to selling in the US. So patents are country specific. And so it's just because someone has a patent in the US, you could make that exact same product as long as you didn't make it in China and you made it somewhere else. But sometimes if there's a patent in China, they could prevent you from exporting the product too. So you got to make sure, double check and make sure that there's no problems, or if your factory does have the patent, say, well, where is the patent? Hell, can you show me proof of the documentation, and verify that that documentation is real and current. The other type of IP is called a copyright. Copyrights cover like the written word. They cover like songs, books. They can cover packaging. Getting a copyright on your packaging is a great way to get hijackers off your listing. If filing a copyright's like $40, it's really easy to do. You can do it yourself. But copyrights give you some protection on written or design type of things like packaging, and songs, written word, your copy, those kind of things. And sometimes if you're having problems with people knocking you off on Amazon, getting a copyright is one of the easiest ways to actually show to Amazon, hey, look, I have a copyright on this. They're using my exact same design. They're not authorized, and that can help you get people off. So those are some of the things you need to keep in mind when it comes to IP on Amazon. So hopefully that's helped you. In the next module, we're going to talk a little bit about the other two, the insurance and administration and accounting things you need to be aware of.